The laughter started before the date even began. A group of young employees from a prestigious corporate firm huddled together in the break room. Their voices low but their mischief obvious. Imagine her face when she realizes her blind date is the janitor. One of them whispered, stifling a laugh. They were talking about Clara, the firm's newly promoted CEO, a woman in her early 30s who had earned her position through sheer determination and brilliance. She had a reputation for being professional, sharp, and distant, so much so that many thought she lacked warmth. To them, this cruel prank seemed harmless entertainment. The janitor they chose as their pawn was Daniel. He was in his late 40s, quiet, humble, and invisible to most who passed him in the office hallways. He worked tirelessly, mopping floors long after others had gone home, fixing broken lights, cleaning up coffee spills, yet no one really knew his story. To the pranksters, he was the perfect target, a man whose simple uniform and calloused hands made him appear the least likely match for a woman of Clara's stature. When Daniel was approached with the idea of a blind date, he was caught off guard. "Me? Are you sure she'd want to meet someone like me?" he asked nervously. They reassured him with fabricated stories that Clara wanted someone down to earth, someone real. Though hesitant, Daniel agreed, partly because he was lonely, and partly because, deep down, he still believed he was worthy of being seen. The night of the date arrived at a quiet restaurant downtown. Clara walked in first. She carried herself with her usual poise, but there was a softness in her eyes that evening. Perhaps she was weary of endless business dinners and shallow conversations. Perhaps she longed, as most do, for a connection that wasn't tied to her title. When she was led to the table, her eyes fell on Daniel. His rough uniform had been replaced with an old but neatly pressed shirt. His hands, though calloused, gripped the chair nervously as he stood to greet her. There was a moment of silence. Clara quickly noticed the stares from a few of her junior employees sitting nearby, trying poorly to hide their smirks. She understood then. They had set this up as a joke. Her pride stung, and for a fleeting moment she considered walking out. But then she looked at Daniel. His nervous smile, his hopeful eyes, the way he smoothed his shirt as though it would make him more presentable. It wasn't a joke to him. Clara sat down. "I'm Clara," she said warmly, extending her hand. His rough palm met hers, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt like someone was truly seeing him. As the meal began, conversation flowed slowly at first. Daniel was reserved, careful not to say the wrong thing. He spoke about his years of working maintenance jobs, about how he had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, but life had other plans after his wife fell sick and passed away. He shared how he raised his daughter alone, how every night of scrubbing floors was to keep a roof over her head. Clara listened, really listened, and her usual CEO facade began to melt away. She told him about her own struggles, the endless hours proving herself in a male-dominated industry, the nights she cried alone in her apartment because no one saw her beyond her title, the fear of being vulnerable. For the first time in a long time, both felt understood. At a nearby table, the pranksters grew restless. They expected laughter, embarrassment, maybe Clara storming out. Instead, they watched as their CEO leaned in closer to the janitor, her eyes glistening with empathy. Then, halfway through dinner, Clara put down her fork and said something that silenced not just Daniel, but the entire room. She turned to the group of employees she had already noticed. "Do you know what's funny?" she said, her voice steady but charged with emotion. "It's how blind we can be to people's worth. You tried to humiliate this man, but what I see sitting in front of me is resilience, sacrifice, and dignity. I see a man who knows what it means to love, to lose, and to keep going. That is no joke." Her words cut through the air like thunder. The smirks faded. Some looked down in shame, others shifted uncomfortably. Daniel sat frozen, his throat tightening, tears threatening to fall. For years he had been overlooked, treated like background noise. But in that moment, someone powerful, someone respected, spoke of him with honor. The rest of the evening unfolded not as a prank, but as a genuine connection. Clara and Daniel laughed over childhood memories, shared stories of failure and redemption, and discovered how deeply two very different lives could intersect through shared humanity. By the time they left, Daniel walked taller, his steps lighter, his heart fuller. The next morning, whispers spread across the office. Everyone knew what had happened. Clara called a meeting. She stood before her employees and addressed them firmly. "We are not measured by titles or clothes or paychecks," she said. We are measured by how we treat others, especially those who are easiest to overlook. If we can't see the value in every single person here, then we've failed as a company. Her eyes swept the room, pausing on the guilty faces of those who planned the prank. Let this be the last time anyone here confuses cruelty for humor. The room fell silent. Some were ashamed, others inspired. But one thing was certain: no one would forget her words. As weeks passed, the office began to change. Employees greeted Daniel by name, thanked him for his work, and treated him with the respect he had always deserved. Clara and Daniel continued to meet outside of work, not as CEO and janitor, but as two souls who found comfort in each other's company. Their story became more than just a blind date. It became a lesson, a reminder that every person carries battles unseen, sacrifices untold, and dignity that deserves recognition. And as Clara once said, true worth isn't in the position you hold, but in the heart you carry. In the end, what began as a cruel joke became a powerful testimony that moved hearts, changed a workplace, and left everyone, yes, even the pranksters, in tears.